Okay, salam alaikum everyone. Welcome to NYU Abu Dhabi. As you settle down, I would like to just give you a little bit of introductory remarks, but let me begin by welcoming all of you here, of course, and I will take time to introduce our panelists who are amazing people, and you will learn about this for this incredibly important and I would say very timely conversation around what is strategic philanthropy. So, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, esteemed panelists, friends, and members of the NYU Abu Dhabi community, real warm welcome to our campus here today. I'm Fabio Piano. I'm the interim vice chancellor of this incredible place called NYU Abu Dhabi, and it's a true privilege to welcome everyone here to explore philanthropy and how it's evolving here in the MENA region in this time in history of humanity. The concept of strategic philanthropy in the MENA region has been discussed quite a lot, and in part because of the leadership that has been provided by our panelist that is sitting here. So I don't want to, he's going to be my co-conspirator here, and in fact, he's the leader behind the wind of this particular event today. So Badr will, in fact, be able to give us some remarks in a minute. But let me give you a little bit of introduction about NYU Abu Dhabi, and then I'll introduce everyone more properly. So we are 15 years old, and we came here 15 years ago as a concept, as an idea. That idea was to build a new institution that was marrying two traditions. One tradition which goes way back to the beginning of the invention of universities and culminates in the American style of universities that are considered to have had a very important impact in the higher education field, and in particular developing what is considered to be the most advanced way of thinking about not just knowledge dissemination, which is what universities are known for, but also knowledge creation and talent attraction. This has been among the characteristics of the success of universities in the US that have created a historic condition for the US to really thrive as a nation. And so the universities have played a fantastically important role there. And NYU in particular, being in New York, is the largest private university in the US, is also home to just about every country and nationality present as a student body at NYU in New York. So it's an international university, and like many other universities, probably in the last 20 years, was considering how to build a part of itself to really celebrate the component of the world that is developing in an international way. But unlike many universities that thought about this in the context of how to continue to expand the attraction of the talent towards the United States, when we came to talk about NYU Abu Dhabi here, the conversation really changed. So I would like to impress upon you that, in fact, just like what we're going to be discussing today, I think that NYU Abu Dhabi is an example of a transformation of higher education that is actually historic. And how does that work? That works by the fact that that history that I just sort of really briefly described meets a country and a leadership. And in that time, it was His Highness Sheikh Mohammed. And he invited us to think about what we would do if we were able to come here. And given the platform of what is this incredible institution in New York, we thought we should create something that could marry with the concept and the traditions and the strength of what this country is about, what this region is about. And especially in the UAE, its openness, its connection, its invitation for everyone to participate in the growth of this global society that we're seeing evolving in front of our eyes. And so for us, this was a transformation. I will give you only one characteristic of that you will not find elsewhere. At NYU Abu Dhabi, you get an NYU degree. We have a board of trustees, just like a single one that sits mostly in New York, but of course some trustees are with us. And the fact is that you can have an NYU degree from Abu Dhabi, we're a degree granting institution, without ever putting your foot in the United States. That's different, because we are not simply a country trying to reach out to the world. We're now the world connecting to the rest of the world. This idea has really taken hold, especially with the recruitment of young people. We talk about connecting across difference. We talk about don't come here if you are afraid of difficult conversation. Because guess what? We're all different. But we respect one another. Traditions are very important. And knowing how to communicate across those differences is one of the mantras of what we built NYU Abu Dhabi around. It's gone very well. We have, from the start, been much more selective than our New York campus, believe it or not. And from the start, we've been able to recruit these incredible cohorts of young people from around the world to join us in building this institution. So in the 15th year, we know that we have had more Rhodes Scholars, who you may know are sometimes called the Nobel Prize winners of the undergraduate population, more Rhodes Scholars from NYU Abu Dhabi than any other university in the world on a per-student basis. So much so that the new president of the Rhodes Trust, in his first trip in January, came to the UAE and came to NYU Abu Dhabi to ask, what do you do? What's your secret? And we told him our secret, and he was very impressed. And it's essentially building around excellence for the students. When you look at the angle of students and the youth and what they're looking for the world, honestly, everything else falls into place. So those kinds of talents, they pushed us to get incredible, talented faculty to teach them. And the faculty that are at NYU Abu Dhabi, they have been carving new territories, new fields. And today, thanks to a program that actually was initiated by our provost, Provost Arlie Petter, sitting here, we have 4 Nobel Prize winners in our faculty. It's an incredible group of faculty, and it's really, really wonderful to see the success. Enough about bragging about NYU Abu Dhabi. But you can see the parallels, I hope. The parallels of what we have been discussing and how this part of the world influences the thinking around maybe traditional concepts, in this case, philanthropy. So before I then give some remarks to my co-conspirators, as I call them for now, I want to introduce him properly. And it's going to take about 2 hours. I hope you have the time. His Excellency Badr Jaffer is undoubtedly known to just about everyone in this room. He's a visionary Emirati leader whose influence spans business, philanthropy, arts, and global development. A champion of global philanthropy and social entrepreneurship. Passionate about corporate transparency and accountability, bringing real-world impact through the Pearl Initiative. He's been a generous patron of the arts, of education, and of course, of the study of strategic philanthropy. It's actually a discipline. Badr and his wife Razan recently joined the Giving Pledge, further demonstrating their commitment to leveraging their support to solve some of the world's most intractable challenges. Recently, he was appointed also as a special envoy of the UAE Minister of Foreign Affairs for Business and Philanthropy, reflecting the crucial role he has played, and I am sure will continue to play, on the national and international stage in bridging the private sector expertise with sustainable development initiatives. It gives me incredible great joy to introduce such a special friend and partner to NYU Abu Dhabi, His Excellency Badr Jaffer.
Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, dear friends, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. My dear Fabio, thank you for, and of course your excellent NYU Abu Dhabi team, for your partnership and for hosting us so warmly. I promise to be brief, 7 minutes max. And I always say to a room full of charities, if your phone rings during my remarks, please do answer it, because it might be someone pledging. Yeah. As our country's president, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, reminds us, our strength is our people and our unity. And that spirit of unity is, I think, what brings us together here today. It's also what will power the coming of age of strategic philanthropy across our region. Our region has always given, quietly, generously, from zakat and waqf to private acts of kindness that never make the news. Those traditions remain sacred. What's changing is how we give. We are moving from charity to change, from isolated acts to systems, from intention to evidence. Globally, over $2 trillion is deployed in philanthropic capital each year. Here in the Gulf, private giving is estimated at around $210 billion annually. We're also living through the largest intergenerational wealth transfer in history, $70 trillion or so, that's a significant share of which is set to shape giving in our own region. And this is an unprecedented opportunity if we build the right enabling environment. Now, in my role as a special envoy for business and philanthropy and as a longtime proponent of strategic giving, I've become convinced that there are three pieces of infrastructure that will determine whether philanthropy truly scales its impact: networks, regulation, and governance and data. First, networks. No one solves complex problems alone, unless you're Trump. We need platforms that connect philanthropists with family enterprises, governments, multilaterals, academics, and community leaders. Platforms that turn good ideas into collective action. Second, regulation. Enabling clear and simple frameworks that make it easier to establish foundations, collaborate across borders, and deploy capital patiently and transparently. When the rules are confusing, impact slows. Third, governance and data. Without quality data, our networks are blind. Without transparency, trust suffers. With both, we can accelerate learning and scale what works and retire what doesn't. And this is where the UAE can and will, inshallah, play a distinctive role. As a global hub for strategic philanthropy, we sit at the crossroads of regions, ideas, and industries. We are a nation of conveners. We know how to turn ambition into architecture. And this is why the work of the Strategic Philanthropy Initiative here at NYU Abu Dhabi matters. Today, we're also marking the launch of a comparative study of strategic philanthropy in the MENA region and beyond by the SPI. It's a timely contribution. It surfaces regional strengths, maps and gaps, and offers practical recommendations drawn from real practice. In short, a field guide to doing better and doing better at giving. Thanks to everybody, of course, who contributed to the study. You've given us a mirror and a map. Let me offer three simple recommendations as we look ahead. Connect. Build communities of practice that span sectors and geographies. Share what works, share what doesn't. Let's make collaboration our default setting. Commit. Back bold ideas with patient, flexible capital. Take smart risks, de-risk follow-on investments, and help turn pilots into platforms. And measure. Ask the hard questions. What changed? For whom? And at what cost? And how do we do it better next time? If we do these things, I think we can unlock the multiplier effect of philanthropic capital, linking public ambition and private ingenuity in the service of common good. Our youth, over 60% of our region, are watching. They are ready. They want transparency, partnerships, and results. Let's meet them there. I'll end where I began, with gratitude to NYU Abu Dhabi, the Strategic Philanthropy Initiative, to our panelists, and to all of you that give not just your resources, but your time and your trust. May our region be known not only for its generosity, but for its effectiveness, not only for ambition, but for measurable outcomes. Thank you, God bless, wassalamu alaikum.
I hope you all get a copy of the document that has been launched today, because as you heard, it has full of information that's very, very useful. Thank you so much, Badr, and it shows what a leader you are in thinking about this, and it shows how you have not only demonstrated how this region can contribute in interestingly different ways from the history of philanthropy, but how it can lead in a different direction or in a new direction that can actually help the world. And I know that a lot of you here have taken the words to heart. As we move to the next part, I would like to invite the panel to actually come and join me up here as I introduce you. I would like to do it while you're here. So please. And your name should be somewhere on the seats. Testing, testing. It's really great to be here. Now I feel like we're in a Diwan or a nice little majlis and have a conversation with friends and have fellow travelers in this incredibly important moment. Allow me to introduce the panel to the audience here. I'll begin with the fact that it is truly a great honor to be here sitting next to Her Royal Highness Princess Lamia bint Majid Al Saud. She's the Secretary General and member of the Board of Trustees at the Al Walid Philanthropies, where she leads groundbreaking initiatives that empower women and youth, strengthen communities, and foster cultural understanding across the globe. Under her leadership, the foundation has touched literally millions of people in more than 180 countries, advancing humanitarian work with vision and, importantly, compassion. Her Royal Highness Princess Lamia also holds a number of roles and leading positions across global organizations, including the UN Habitat Regional Goodwill Ambassador for Arab States, and is the CEO of Rotana Media Group. Her Royal Highness, we are grateful and honored to have you with us here today. Thank you. Our next panelist, Muna Isa Al Ghurg, a distinguished business leader and philanthropist. As Vice Chair and Director of Retail at the Isa Saleh Al Ghurg Group, she has driven innovation and growth across one of the UAE's most prominent family businesses, while serving on the boards of HSBC Middle East, the Emirates Foundation for Youth Development, and Young Arab Leaders. In 2023, she established MEME Foundation, so recently, relatively speaking, dedicated to empowering women and girls across the MENA region with a particular focus on healthcare and education. I'm particularly delighted to welcome Muna here because the MENA Foundation has recently made a major commitment to support groundbreaking research for one of our faculty in the clinical AI lab here at NYU Abu Dhabi. Can't thank you enough for that. Muna has also just become one of the latest signatories of the Giving Pledge, committing to direct the majority of her wealth to philanthropic causes. Muna, thank you for the trust you place in our university and sharing your insights as an active philanthropist with us today. Third panelist who has not been introduced so far is Fadi Gandour, a trailblazer entrepreneur and logistics pioneer. I am certainly everyone here in the room has had some contact with Aramex, which was the first Arab company. And they'll come and tell you if they've liked their experiences, but I'm sure it's been great. And it was, of course, the first company to be listed on the NASDAQ. He led the business for 30 years as a passionate advocate for building businesses that not only generate profits, but also solve real societal problems. As the executive chairman and CEO of Wanda Group, he supports startups that integrate sustainability, social impact, and economic value, championing impact-driven ventures in technology, education, and logistics across the MENA region. And finally, as a champion for social entrepreneurship and youth empowerment, Fadi founded NYUAD for development, focused on empowering marginalized communities, an incredibly important thing. Welcome, Fadi. I'm so glad on this occasion that you could come and visit us, and I hope this will be a first of many. Thank you. Of course, our Excellency Badr Jafar, the founding patron of Strategic Philanthropy Initiative here at NYU Abu Dhabi. It's always a pleasure to also welcome you as part of the panel now, and thank you again for leading this important discussion. Thank you so much. So let me begin with a question that is answered. Actually, we'd love to hear all of your answers to that, so for everyone, and to setting the stage of what you've heard in the introductory remarks, some aspects of what Strategic Philanthropy Initiative has actually highlighted. And it's basically a shift here from the MENA region, from the traditional charitable giving to a more strategic, data-driven approach. It is also clear that there is not one unified, monolithic way of thinking about this approach. So maybe you could give us and give the audience a sense of what you think about strategic philanthropy. What does it mean to you?
Assalamu alaikum. First, I would like to thank you, Fabio, and I would like to thank everyone, and it's a true honor to be with you guys today. First, I would like to give just a small brief about the foundation. Our foundation, it's Al Walid Philanthropies Foundation, chaired by His Royal Highness Prince Al Walid bin Talal. It's our 45th year this year. We work in 190 countries. We work in 5 areas of focus, which is community development, goes under it, health, education, infrastructure, empowering women and youth, and we lean toward the economical empowerment. We do a lot of providing vital disaster relief in time of crisis. We do a lot of bridging gap through culture and promoting for dialogue and understanding. And our newest, I would say, area of focus, which is promoting for a healthier world. We reached, alhamdulillah, we reach 1.2 billion beneficiaries around the world. Wow. We spend $5 billion in philanthropy. And more, the most important thing, this is all done by 10 Saudi ladies only, which I have the honor to be one of them. Today, it's me and 2 of my team, so 30% of the foundation is here. Let's talk about sustainability and philanthropy. Now, you know, everyone here in the Arab world, giving is something in our DNA. It's not something that we learn, or it's not about practicing. It's about everyday. It's a day-to-day life action, I would say. In Islam, if you smile in the face of the person in front of you, that you did something good at the end of the day. One word you can say, it can change lives. Honestly, if you had this position, or if people look up to you. So people on this stage have a tremendous, huge responsibility, by the way. It's not only about the amazing work that you're doing, it's about your character and how you can influence people around the world. Sustainability, or changing the face of philanthropy from tradition to sustainable, as Badr said, it's very important to understand that nowadays after, I would say, the pandemic, I know it was a very tough time, but for me, it was very inspiring time as well. Because you depended on data, you depended on digital, and this is very important. Nowadays, to reach or to create awareness about certain problem or a disease, or you want to tackle a certain goal, you don't have to do whatever been done before. You can just use technology, and it's like that, and you reach. Moreover, in the foundation, we don't do everything, of course, 10 Saudi ladies, but we do believe in collaboration. That being said, you need to have a very, I would say, steady system for you to approach, to conquer, to understand, and to listen. We pay attention in each and every community that we work in, how we do understand the community, what's the need, and how to make it sustainable. Giving away, it's Allah yajazik Allah khair, I'm not complaining. Of course, this is a system for people to give, but us and the foundation, we have a lot of I would say, measuring impact indicators for us to go forward, and in the foundation as well. I would like to give just a small example about the sustainability in projects. So everyone remember when Allah Ytalib Umrah, King Salman approved driving for women. 48 hours after the announcement, we did an affiliation with Kareem to empower Saudi driver ladies. We empower them, we give them training, we give them their license. And now we have almost 75 Saudi women captains in Kareem. Not here, we didn't stop here. We find another opportunity to empower people with physical disability. So we prep the cars for girls and female and males to drive the taxis. And now we have 30 female drivers with a physical disability, and we have 70 male driver. This is how you understand. Thank you. This is what I'm saying. You need to understand the need of the community, and what's applicable in Saudi Arabia, it will not be applicable in UAE, it will not be applicable in India. So you need to give respect for each and every community and to understand more on their need.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Yeah, a few.
Is this? Yes, okay. Wonderful. Thank you, Fabio, for having me here today. And I really look forward to this very interesting conversation and discussion. For me personally, really, strategic philanthropy is charity 2.0. It's a sustainable way of doing philanthropy. It's long-term, and it's more data-driven in decision-making. And it involves a lot more impact reporting. And it also involves a lot more, thought into whether the programs are working for you, analyzing what's working for you. So that desire to really understand if your programs are really working for you, a lot more analysis. And a good example, again, at MENA Foundation, we're quite a young foundation, but we've learned a lot in this period. We have worked in Lebanon, where we provided a lot of grants for young Lebanese women, and we conducted an impact report at the end of that year to see how did the programs work for them. And there was a lot of positive feedback. However, we also did find out that the women really, the programs were very useful to the women. However, they got stuck at the point where they needed access to capital. So, and so at MENA Foundation, we turned around and thought, okay, we're enabling these women, but then they get stuck at a point where they don't know how to move forward. So I think it's that whole, realization that you need to assess and analyze your programs and grants very well. Now, historically, in the MENA region, and probably globally also, people did not think much about data. They didn't really look at data historically. People would, there were lots of handouts, I would say, that happened, and with good intention. However, in this day and age, with all the statistics and data and research that is available to us, I think it's so important to put aside a budget within our NGOs and our foundations to say, These are the resources that I'm putting for our foundation to actually, achieve the best outcomes, quantifiable outcomes. And it's not easy. And I think that's exactly why a lot of NGOs or foundations actually don't do it. It's not easy. Putting aside resources and a budget and taking the time to analyze all that data, it's not easy at all, but it is absolutely impactful. And that's exactly what we're trying to achieve with strategic philanthropy. We are trying to be as impactful as possible in the world that we live in. And if I were to ask you, would you like to impact much more people in the world than you are right now? The answer would most likely be yes. And I think these are the steps that we need to take, whether it be in terms of reporting, whether it be in terms of analyzing our data. The resources need to be there within your foundations and NGOs to take your foundation and work to the next step and level.
This is a very interesting description that I think we'll pick up some more, but I want to hear, with...
Thank you, Fabio, and thank you for NYU for hosting us, and Badr, and being with such an incredible leaders in philanthropy and in impact work. So what I will bring, it's a cumulative story, right? So everything related to strategic philanthropy, from what we heard, is a continuation to what I'm seeing. For me, strategic philanthropy is effectively an action-oriented process towards solving, right? So, and I want to simplify it. So it's not about us only, right? So we're capable people, we have resources, but anybody can come out and solve. And that's why Badr, for instance, supports social entrepreneurship. What's social entrepreneurship at the end of the day? It's a person in a neighborhood that sees a problem and goes out and wants to solve it. And that's strategic, right? Because you're solving for society, for a community. It doesn't have to be solving for the world either. Solving for the people that live on your street is strategic. Collaboration within the community is strategic. Bringing an entrepreneurial mind for me. I mean, I am an entrepreneur, I'm a serial entrepreneur. When I see something, my brain doesn't function only by talking about it. If I'm not gonna do something about it, I'm gonna move on. If I'm incapable of solving or bringing attention to that issue so that we address how we can solve it for our own societies. I mean, I care about our own societies. It's not like Bill Gates who wants to solve the global problems. I think charity or philanthropy starts at home. And we have so many problems at our homes, and we need to go out and actually solve. And the private sector and individuals and the action of citizenship, the responsibility of the citizen to care about the community that he or she lives in, is so essential, so that it becomes a societal issue. And not only, governments will be able to solve in certain countries. But in many other countries in our region, governments are incapable of doing that alone. And you need a societal mobilization to go out and solve. And so there are certain people like us who can create organizations and foundations and do whatever we can do and empower social entrepreneurs and be part of this community work, which is part of what I have done. But it is also essential that there is that responsibility among the citizens, that a problem in our society, even though we're not living in that neighborhood, is our problem. The well-being of society in general, or a country or a community, is the well-being of the individual. I mean, there is no happiness in being, let's say, a capable person or a person living in relative wealth when the whole community is suffering. And so when we see that there are problems in education, in employment, in youth, challenges, we need to go out, specifically us in the private sector, and see how we can actually contribute to the process of making a difference and helping our society to be in good health, if you want. It's as simple as that. So it can be big, it can be small. Everything is in that process is solving for impact and is strategic. And that's so essential for us to remember, because people need to know it's not only about the wealthy. Every single one of them can go out and solve. And so that's my view of how it is. And that's why, for me, entrepreneurship is so essential, because entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurial mind is a mind that thinks, I want to solve. Or not sit, armchair revolutionaries, we call them. They complain all the time and talk about all the problems all the time. Oh, the Arab world is this. Oh, the Arab world is that. Ya akhi, and go do something about it.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, thank you. You know, you touch on something I want to.
The last word in Arabic you can translate.
Yes. I will say that one thing you touched upon that is close to my heart, but I want to give actually Badr a sense of responding to some of these comments. My first reaction is, in fact, in some sense, I've dedicated my life with the one asset we all have that is exactly the same, and that's time. I've dedicated my life to institutional building for developing the youth, for thinking that education has this incredible impact over time, over place, and in a way that I think I've been very honored to be able to do what I do. And I don't tell everybody I would do it for free, but it's really an honor to do what I do, and I'm really excited by this. So it's a part of my sort of follow-up question. But before I do, I want to ask Badr to sort of comment on these ideas and in the context of strategic philanthropy, of course.
Thank you. If I may just pick up on the point that Fadi really was making, which is that everybody is a change maker. Everybody has a capacity to be a change maker. The issue I see is, of course, and it's understandable, is people feeling this sense of helplessness when they see these big problems and big challenges that they think are bigger than them. I didn't plan on doing this, but because Fadi raised this, I have a friend of mine, I won't name him, but he lives in Canada. He's a beautiful writer, and every once in a while, he's a very good businessman also, but every once in a while he just sits down and puts his pen to paper and sends his thoughts out. And he shared this with me yesterday, and I liked it. So I'll read it, it's quite short. The world weighs heavy some days. You see the headlines, the suffering, the injustice, and your heart breaks. You want to do something, say something, fix something, but most of it lies far beyond your reach. That's the burden of living with an open heart in a fractured world. Your sphere of concern is vast. Your sphere of influence is not. But helplessness isn't your only option. Despair isn't a virtue. What matters is how you show up here, where your hands can touch, where your voice can soothe, where your choices ripple outward. Start there. That's not small, it's sacred. Let the pain you feel refine your attention. Let it deepen your care, not paralyze it. You cannot carry the world, but you can carry light into your corner of it, and that's enough. Do what you can.
Wow, it's so beautiful. It really is so beautiful.
So I think that in many ways, and I love how Fadi presented his thoughts about how if we all see ourselves as having the ability to make a difference, then differences will happen. And if you just look at philanthropic capital, I often refer to it as the forgotten child of the capital system. In many parts of the world, it's often regarded as a periphery player, as something nice that happens on the side. And in some parts of the world, it's viewed with a great degree of skepticism and even paranoia at times. The reality is, just on the quantum side of things, philanthropic capital, as I mentioned, is disbursed north of $2 trillion. I mean, the estimates are $1 to $2 trillion. I commissioned a small study a few years ago which found that it could well be north of $2 trillion, and I'm convinced is. But if you just take the lower end of the estimate, $1 trillion, that's 3 times more the combined total global annual humanitarian and development budgets from all governments internationally. So it's not small, number one. But the more exciting part is its qualitative dimension. The fact, as dear Mona mentioned, the fact that it is more risk tolerant. It is more patient. It is more, in many aspects, equitable in its deployment. And it's these features, these qualitative aspects that when combined and paired with business capital and government capital that can create that multiplier effect that we so desperately need to address many of these challenges. The good news is, onto the point about strategic philanthropy and where it's going, is we see some unstoppable trend lines now, partly fueled by this massive wealth transition that's happening around the world, but including in the region. I mean, in Asia, we expect north of $20 trillion to pass to the next generation in the coming decade. And this next generation is more demanding of being hands-on, more demanding of transparency, more attuned to the interconnectedness of the various challenges that take place. They don't sort of put them in buckets or try and isolate them. They see them as one system, and that's crucial when you're trying to solve these systemic global problems. And the third piece, as has been mentioned by Your Royal Highness, the digital transformation that we're seeing. Technology today is changing in many respects the way that philanthropy is deployed. In some respects, it's moving philanthropy from a one-to-many model, where a very wealthy individual is able to give to numerous beneficiaries, to a many-to-one model, where you have now a sea of donors online donating relatively smaller amounts of giving. I refer to it as retail philanthropy, which is so important. But now, with technology, they can combine their efforts into very large-scale changes and donations, if we're talking about capital. And this is exciting. So why I'm excited that this region, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, that the region in general has a phenomenal ability to really act as a hub for strategic philanthropic capital, is for the reasons I mentioned. The network effect, right? We are a convening society. I mean, look at many examples of recent, very large-scale, multilateral, international, global, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of countries, coming together, whether it was the Expo, whether it was COP, I mean, many other examples, coming together to identify our commonalities and come together to address our challenges as humanity and, of course, as our habitat. And the second piece is technology. I think there's no doubt, and there shouldn't be any doubt in anyone's mind, that we take technology and deep technology very seriously. We're putting our money where our mouth is, and we're developing the relationships and the partnerships that are needed to transform our systems with the right technology and responsibly, not just here, but globally. The thing we need to do a better job on is the regulatory environment, quite frankly. If we are to truly create an enabling regulatory environment, we need to take a long, hard look at what we need to do to improve our current systems to make sure that we are unlocking opportunity and not stifling it. That's critical. And what I can say from a UAE perspective is that's absolutely being taken very seriously. So there are serious efforts underway to look very meaningfully at what it is that we need and not assume that what we think the solutions are the actual solutions. We're having as many conversations as we can to make sure that it's fit for purpose and not falling into the trap of using a cookie-cutter approach, saying let's just take a UK model or a US model or a Singaporean model, because we need to develop something that's relevant for the region and for the system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add
Of
one
course.
thing, which I forgot to mention in my talk, and complements what Badr has been saying now, is that in today's world, specifically in the past 6 months, it's a reminder for all of us, dependency on politically positioned aid. It's dangerous. It's dependency. There is enough wealth, enough knowledge, enough capabilities in our own people to solve our own problems. When US aid goes away, we're not going to panic. And so that dependency is so dangerous Because suddenly, not only in this region, in Africa and everywhere else, that's a call for action for the people and specifically the business community in these countries that have done well, is that you step in and you stop this dependency on aid and be part of the development process. That's strategic philanthropy, and that's a trend that is happening now, and that is where your national interests trump anything else.
Well said. Well said. I can't resist. You speak in terms that are so familiar to a university that is also built around creating knowledge, understanding knowledge. You're discussing what is a very complicated task, which is essentially doing good for the world. And it's complicated for many reasons, partly because it has unintended consequences, as we discussed before, partly because it has the concept of, discussing what has been attempted, whether it worked in the direction that one wants to make sure that the direction is going forward on. But I can't tell you how it resonates with the NYU Abu Dhabi concept, where we talk about the fact that as an institution, for us, being an excellent academic institution is the low bar. For us, the high bar is to be able, and we talked about this also before, is to be able to create the people that have that level of knowledge, understanding, analytical skills, capacity, to actually use it for good for the world. And that's how we were built. So in a sense, I come back to the fact that having worked with a lot of NGOs, having worked also with various foundations, sometimes they're really focused on what they're supposed to do, and they actually do not have even the regulatory element to say we're supposed to study, which is the question of what we're doing, is it doing good? They actually came to us sometimes to say, can you study this? Because we can't. It's not part of our mandate. So I wonder if that could be, and I wanted to ask you about the region in particular, but perhaps that's a way that the region can influence the way of thinking philanthropy, but just specifically about doing work that, in fact, asks the hard questions of the data gathering and the analytics for it that may be coming out of this part of the world. I don't know if that is an element that resonates with you. Any comments about that?
I believe when we talk about knowledge, there is something very important in philanthropy. I don't think a lot of people are, I would say, recognizing it, which is business in philanthropy. This is very important. How to set your budget, how to set your priorities, and how to, I would say, manage your cash. How would you monitor our chairman always says there is an ROI for everything, Prince Walid. So $1, how it will affect one person. So business and philanthropy, it's very important for continuity. You need to understand how you're gonna use your funds and how you prioritize that it should be depending on data. And then we go back to what Badr said. It's all about data. And if you don't know where you're standing now, how would you know where you're gonna go moving forward? But the most important thing, and the amount of money that it is in the region just for philanthropy, it's huge. But how we can actually maximize the effect? It's about the knowledge, how to use the money, and how to track the money, and how to measure your impact. And again, as of course mentioned, it's not about a big scale only project. It's about communities, and this is what we do in the foundation. Yes, we have a big scale project like what we're doing with the Gates and the polio. We're one of the main, supporter. We reach 1 billion kids around the world, but there is another, for me, as the head of foundation, there is a smaller project that I know for a fact, I saw it with my own eye. It reflects on a full community, and it solves a lot of problems with a very small amount of money. It's about the purpose at the end of the day and the knowledge, and how you can use the money and for what. It's basically you answer the four W's and H at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, if I were to, take lead from that, coming from the private sector where positioned, I would say, for growth. And so we're almost indoctrinated to always think about our KPIs and to think about results, our 5-year plan. And so I think I've taken those learnings from the private sector into what I do at MEME Foundation. And I'm almost like grilling the team all the time about, what are KPIs for the first quarter? Have we achieved them? Even in terms of, which events have we spoken at? In terms of sharing knowledge. So it's really important for charities and foundations to think in that manner, to really think almost like a private sector switch goes off in your head in terms of, the way you're giving. And again, going back to the point of analyzing data. So these are all really important points to think about. And honestly, as a next-gen philanthropist, I think from my personal wish, it would be to really see more foundations in the region think along those lines. And that's why I'm here today. I'm here today to share our thoughts and to learn from others, but to really share our thoughts on how foundations and charities need to kind of make that switch, and not to rely, as Fadi said, on handouts from the likes of USAID and others, and to be innovative, really be innovative within your giving. And I think we'll speak about that later on, but innovation is a key part to your giving also.
I have a follow-up with that because that's really a wonderful segue, because I had a question. Essentially, you answered it without me asking the question, which is great because of your journey, your own personal journey. But I want to continue that thought to say, one could imagine, if they're not thinking about this for, maybe all the time, that governments are supposed to do a lot of this work. And one could also imagine on the other side, if services are created that are able to self-sustain, social entrepreneurship could actually take the capitalist system and continue that. It feels like you're describing a gap in a way that perhaps business leaders can see it in a way that others perhaps can't. So my curiosity, I think, for people thinking about how to follow with your leadership, having just made this transition in a big way, what have you been learning, and what would you give to others as a sense of wanting to sort of maybe inspire them to think about what it would take for them to go in this direction?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, leading with curiosity. I'd like to see more younger people think about, what are they curious about? What are you curious about in this world? What is igniting that curiosity? And I think, if I were to give a personal story, I was curious about, how women and girls are impacted in the MENA region, but I honestly did not know how to move forward from there. And I was given an opportunity, a fellowship with the Aspen Institute, where they essentially spoke about the good society for 18 months. So we would travel to various parts of the world and, being closed with a group of 18 Arabs and talking about, the good society. And I came out of that program very focused and knowing what I wanted to do. I knew I was passionate about women and girls, but the program helped me. So I would say really take opportunities that come your way, that can ignite that curiosity as a young person, and that way that could be a very good segue to your next step. And sometimes also we tend to be we procrastinate starting something because we almost feel like, as Fadi said, there are huge problems in the world. Where do I start? What do I do? How am I going to make any sort of difference? And honestly, I would say start and the work will teach you. And if you'd like to reach out to any organizations that can help you along the way, such as, the Pearl Initiative or people like us, we're more than happy to kind of share our thoughts with you on how to start. But start, honestly, start and be passionate about what you're doing. Think about what you'd like to change in the world. And I would, lastly just say, take any opportunity that comes your way, whether it's a program or a talk or a mentorship program to help you to take that next step.
That's great. That's really wonderful. Thanks so much. I want to go from there to Badr, who in a way goes from a a sense of having thought about the fact that you've made a very strong argument for the fact that this is a force of nature. It's a force in the world that should be recognized, that should be taken into consideration. So it feels that also you've been part of the Giving Pledge that I'm sure is thinking about these kinds of things all the time. But you've been an advocate for a kind of philanthropic infrastructure that can come out of this region to emphasize also the need for regulations. You commented on this as one of the things that needs to be involved and moved forward. So what is the most critical steps that you feel are needed that actually governments or businesses and other philanthropists can make together because of the connectivity and network that you mentioned so many times, that enables an environment, especially maybe for the next generation of givers, to continue to grow this concept?
So just quickly want to reflect on the sort of previous question and just hearing the comments from my fellow panelists. You know, there was once a world where everybody had their place and everybody said, you know, government's role was this, business's role was this, social sector's role was this, and never the two or three should meet. We've moved beyond that, really. So we talked about impact. That impact spectrum has become more blended in nature, right? And that presents huge opportunities, but also some room for confusion. And we have to also be honest about that can create sometimes confusion and friction. So we need to, as much as we possibly can, try to, I don't know if define is the right word, but try and find some sense of order. Because otherwise we can find sometimes two stakeholders working against each other for, in theory, for the same, you know, goal. What I will say is, even if you take, you know, Fadia mentioned US aid as an example. You know, I had conversations after the, you know, the quite, in some ways, depressing announcement that US aid is no longer, or at least for the time being. But, you know, some American friends of mine, some of which are obviously on the other side of the spectrum, political spectrum, I should say, say, you know, how terrible this is, and people are going to die, and it's, you know, a huge amount of money that's going to be sucked from, you know, the pipeline. And yes, it is a lot of money, but actually when you put it in perspective, interestingly, again, to Fadi's point, USA, the peak was last year, or the year before, I think it was last year, 2024, at around $70 billion. Now, not suggesting $70 billion isn't a lot of money, but you know what total private giving, private, not government, not businesses, private individuals in America gave last year? Close to 700 billion. So 10 times. 10 times what US aid, its whole budget, the whole US government budget. Now, I'm not suggesting that that'll replace that overnight, because it won't. And when you switch off the tap overnight, certain projects that are mid-funding are going to suffer, inevitably, and people will die, which is the catastrophe. But when you look at it from a quantum perspective, there's so much capacity within the system to go around. And I think we need to be much more strategic about how we look at placing or channeling, if you will, those funds. To your point about infrastructure, so I sort of mentioned, I guess, in my remarks, and my opening remarks, where I think the key focus should be. And it's really the focus of each of these initiatives and centers that I'm delighted to be partnering with academic centers of excellence such as NYU Abu Dhabi on, which is really the convening dimension, very important, that we can come together like this today and have conversations and talk about what's going well, talk about what's not going well, and see how we can be greater than the sum of our parts. That's critical, and that's, I think, a key piece of infrastructure. The second piece is the education dimension. I'm using the word education because we are in a center of education, but it's fundamentally about sharing knowledge. And it's very important that we do so, and the data piece is critical to that, because we need to start building very strong repositories of local data that we can use. And guess what? We have amazing tools today at our, fingertips that we didn't have even a few years ago, that could help to both collate, analyze, and process that data, and then present it in a way that we can understand it to help shape our future decisions and behavior. And the third piece really is, I think, is communication. We talked about it, the role of communication in general before we came up here, and I think that is critical, because at times I find the gaps in various sectors being able to communicate with each other, or the lack of communicative abilities between two sectors or between two stakeholders. And I think if we can connect those dots with less friction, so much more can happen. If we're able to bring together both the all the abilities and capacities and networks of government, of business, of the social sector, and then we add to that the geographic dimension, where we can look at north, south, east, west, and how that can come together, the opportunity is endless. And that's again why I think this region has a unique, and I don't use that word lightly, it really is, when you think about it, unique ability to tie all these pieces together.
Yeah, I agree, and very well said. And of course, coming to bringing business, bringing governments, giving regulations, institutions like ours are set up to ask hypotheses questions. We're not set up to have a goal in that way, but we are set up, in fact, to give the best answer that is, in fact, as neutral as one can have. It is not like an institution that you hire to do an analysis. We are, in fact, full of faculty here that do work in field work, for example, that do tests of hypotheses to try to see if you test hypotheses by using an intervention in one community and a control experiment of another intervention with you get data. That's how we're set up to help in this particular moment as an institution that can help in that. We're also scholars, and maybe during the question and answers from the audience, we help design institutions. We study what is the mechanism by which these institutions are best served to move forward. And so in many ways, I think the role that an institution like ours can play is to be used for that purpose, for the purpose of analyzing the data. Fadi, you have a comment on that.
So I'm going to give you some advice on what education institutions might do also, in continuation to what you were saying. I think it's so essential, back to the data story, back to information. I mean, it's so essential that we get accurate data so that we are solving for real problems that are, and we can quantify that. I think where civil society, where business community, where philanthropists want to go out and do things in partnership with learning and education institutions is to do two things. One is needs-based data, right? So what does the community need? How big is this problem, right? And so that when you come back with these issues, then you address the how do we solve? What is required to solve? What is needed to solve? And it's not only about money, right? As Badr was saying, so it's about networks, it's about communities, it's about partnering with government, the private sector, it's mobilizing everyone. But it needs the education institutions, it needs universities like yours to move also, for you, to move also into the practice of it outside of the classroom. Because in today's world and with AI, you guys need to change the way you are addressing issues so that you're addressing real problems in society, in the real world, outside of the campus. It's so essential. And the second thing that I think is essential, because that's your core competency, is then to do an assessment. What happened? Was this impactful? Did it work? Did it not work? And then if it did not work, how do we actually pivot and change and do things? And so, again, back to Badr's original three things that he said is essential. This is a network. This is a partnership. This is a strategic partnership among all sorts of institutions. And we probably forgot, even though we're here, to emphasize how important it is that the skill set that you bring to the table partnering with the skill set of entrepreneurial minds and people that want to solve, then you have a formula that actually is very impactful.
That's a great, very, very, very well said. Thank you so much for that. It reminds me of a little story. You know, our NYU in New York campus is in the Village in the southern part of Manhattan. Sometimes here we call it our NYU Abu Dhabi West campus, but that's the way we look at it. But it's on, there's a Soho and there's a street called Bleecker Street that's full of music and bars and so on. Very touristy. I should take a picture and send it if I find the sign. I saw the sign last summer on the window that because it's very touristy. Tourist information, so you can come in, it's free. Correct information, $5. So I think this is essentially one of the points you're trying to make, and I couldn't agree more. I would like to go back to Your Highness for thinking a little bit about the Al Walid Philanthropies, which is such a large footprint, such a global and, as you said, you know, historic enterprise here now with impact and large-scale projects. How does the foundation of that size, you know, balance what could be deep-rooted traditions, having had that history, and also the traditions of course, this part of the world and the country, the traditions of giving, with the need for agile and innovation and the strategies that actually need to be nimble? How do you balance that?
As I think I will continue what was, you know, discussed now. We have a formula in the foundation. So it's when we work in different countries around the world or in different areas of focus around the world, we have a formula that it must be, you know, delivered. So we first have to have a governmental entity on ground to ensure sustainability of the project and to ensure smoothness of the project. We need to have a local NGO to make sure that it is delivering what's needed in the community we're in, as well as a partner that only responsible for data and measuring impact. This is for us, and I would just comment on what Badr was saying. And I agree with you, it's not all about the government. They have to give you the mandate what to do. In Saudi Arabia, I'll take Saudi Arabia as example. We are part of certain committees that we give to the government or the Ministry of Development what's needed in certain communities and certain areas around Saudi Arabia. So it's very important to understand what are you targeting. And you need to have those key players alongside with you to ensure the delivery of the project. And I also agree with Mona, because when you look to philanthropy, and it's kind of a business, by the way. You're giving services, you're giving product, and you need to have an ROI on the product. Is it going to satisfy your customer, which is your beneficiaries, or not? So we always have to have this, you know, trio. We always say it's trio, and this is the vision of His Royal Highness. I think he's doing the same in business, but it's always like that, just to ensure that when you're out as a funder, it will not stop there, it will continue. So we always have to be aligned with different, you know, in different countries with different regulation for, you know, it depends on what are you targeting.
It sounds like, you know, spoken like a true impactful organization that can have such a large impact that if you don't coordinate it even ahead of time, as you're talking about networks, it could have really unintended consequences, and that seems to be a lesson that is really very important. Going back to Fadi for a second, the Awamda Capital and your role in founding NYUAD for Development show a clear commitment to using entrepreneurial principles, and you touched upon this, and I want to just get back to that, for social good. And we've been discussing various parts of that. But how can the mindset of the venture capitalist focused on scalability, measurable returns, and long-term investments be effectively applied to philanthropy to create that sustainable change? And I'm thinking that it can connect to some of the comments that we've been hearing, that perhaps we need to clarify whether there is or there isn't a tension, and if there is a tension, how to alleviate it, that the private sector sees profits and may not actually think that this is good for business? How does one bring more of the private sector into the conversation?
So I'll give you two answers. One related to venture capital as such in a wider scope than just strictly financing, startups and then exiting and making money, right? So, but we'll talk about that and see how we can apply that concept maybe through a much more patient process. But let me say something about the private sector in general, and we've touched on it. I don't want to be too repetitive here. But I think there is, in general, corporations and companies, there needs to be, because everybody thinks that they're going to have corporate social responsibility, etc. I mean, we don't talk about it, even though the world might have moved forward. I am one that says it's great that corporations want to do stuff, but they need to be strategic about it. And so once you're strategic about it and remove the PR side of it, right? So because, I mean, khalas, it's clear. We know. You don't need to show us too much that you are philanthropic. Even though I don't mind, I mean, people should, I mean, we're talking about philanthropy here, and you need to propagate the concept that there needs to do that. But, and I've written about this before. I called it corporate entrepreneurship responsibility. And why did I put entrepreneurship there versus social? Because in entrepreneurship, and the business sector understands the concept of entrepreneurship, right? And so once we put entrepreneurship in there, then there is something that is actionable in there. Meaning, are you supporting entrepreneurs? Are you buying from entrepreneurs? Are you funding entrepreneurs? Are you giving entrepreneurs access? Because at the end of the day, entrepreneurship, where you give youth or anybody that the ability to build a business and be a job creator rather than a job seeker, right? And job creation is solving for a problem in society, right? And so, and entrepreneurship is one way of doing it outside of government, because government is not going to employ everyone anymore, right? It doesn't want to, and it shouldn't, and that's how the private sector carries part of the responsibility. And so it's not only about funding also. So I tell private sector people, are you, when a small company comes and pitches for a product, you need to buy. Are you buying from Microsoft or from someone else that is actually in your society that solves for the same problem? Will you give them a chance? Will you open your door? Will you at least listen to the pitch? Will you open your door? What does your procurement department do with community-based suppliers? Are you thinking of your community-based suppliers, or only you want to buy the IBMs and be safe, right? So I'm using, I don't know, 20th century concepts. Does IBM still exist? I don't know. But anyway, so my mind frame is still there. But that's so essential. And so access to money, access to networks, regulatory process, right? Are we helping the new digital companies with the regulators? Because we're capable. I mean, Badr and I and Muna and Her Highness, and we have access to the public sector. Will we go out and actually work with the entrepreneurs in getting some regulatory environment to enable them? Because this is all new terrain for government. It's not that they don't want to regulate, it's that it's a bit overwhelming in the new things that are happening between AI and fintech, and the central bank is normally very conservative. Will we allow fintech companies to come out and build businesses and create new wealth? And that's how I will move into the next point here. There's nothing wrong with making money, obviously. Not culturally, not in our religion, etc. You should make money. So, and venture capital, in its long-term, very patient process, helps. When you're helping companies, startups, young people, not necessarily young people, women, men, whatever, in building businesses, it's not only that they're also employing only, they're creating new wealth outside of the traditional wealth. I can give you so many examples, but I'll give you one because it's relevant to this region. Kareem. We'll take Kareem alone. When Kareem when Kareem eventually sold out to You know how many people made millions of dollars from that process, right? There were 70 new people that were middle managers that made millions of money. This is new wealth. It recirculates in society. The individual is empowered suddenly, right? So there is, I'm not whitewashing venture capital, right? I'm not laundering it here, right? It has its problems. It's not perfect. But I'm saying in general, we need, again, to think of it from the wider perspective of how many, thousands and thousands in the past 10 years in this region, thousands and thousands of new companies popped up, new wealth, away from their traditional wealth, away from inheritance, away from real estate, away from the traditional, away from government contracts. These are new types of people. They are the builders of this next generation. And that's impactful, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well said. We're basically out of time, but I want to give Badr, maybe, if I may, the last word. We had some amazing practical, and I'm sure there'll be questions. I want to leave time for the questions from the audience. But I would like to ask you something towards the sublime, maybe going back to the reading of the text that you shared with us. Thank you for that. Maybe you give an example of, I hear all these practical things, but it's also such an incredible joy, I am sure, when things work, when there's something that is done that makes an impact, and you can see that. Maybe you can speak to attracting the young generation to thinking about how they can participate in this big, exploding field of philanthropy in a way that speaks to how have you enjoyed being involved in philanthropy?
Well, I always think advice is a dangerous endeavor. So I wouldn't call this advice, but really just going back to what dear Muna says, which is stay curious. It's so important. And I think it really is one of the qualities of great leadership. Giving personal examples, when I have the honor and pleasure of sitting with members of our leadership in the UAE, the thing that comes out so clearly is how humble and curious they are. There is never any mindset or attitude that we know everything. It's constantly wanting to understand the other's views and trying to identify with their issues in order to inform our actions. And that comes to the second point, which is if there is curiosity, the only other, being dangerous here, piece of advice that I would give is to remain compassionate. And compassionate goes far beyond, sometimes it's, when you translate it into different languages, it can be misconstrued. But fundamentally, it's underpinned by the so-called golden rule, which is do unto others as you would want done unto yourself. Or the other way, do not do unto others as you would not want done unto yourself. Everything else really is commentary. So if you can combine curiosity and compassion in your giving and what you do, that'll be a good start, I think.
That's a fantastic way to end this section and segment. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. And I wanted to leave a few minutes for the audience that I know has many people who are really curious about philanthropy, strategic philanthropy, to give a sense. And I wonder if anyone has any questions. I see the first, how many microphones are going around? Maybe we'll give one microphone here and a microphone to the gentleman there, please. And I will go first to the lady and then to the gentleman.
Hello. This is obviously turned on. Thank you so much. It's just, I feel so motivated and full of passion listening to all of you speak. My name is Alex Farah. I'm from a philanthropy advisory service based in Dubai, where we connect capital from businesses and high net worth individuals to philanthropies or community projects with as little red tape and as quickly as possible. I was just reflecting, Your Excellency, on what you said about the $2 trillion worth of money that's being given by individuals to philanthropic causes. And I'm just interested in the context of the regulatory reforms that we've been touching on a little bit today. I know that of that $2 trillion, a lot of it is held in very conservative endowments, particularly in the West, where it's actually not being used to make the kind of change that the current moment calls for. What we see, I do a lot of work in American philanthropies, and we see payout rates of only around 8 or 9% per annum of these very large endowments that are being held. And recently one of my clients was telling me that no foundation intends to be a massive bureaucratic mess, but you tend to wake up one day and find that that's where you are. If we are looking to harness the generosity and the innovation of the Gulf region in a new regulatory environment that's designed to enable philanthropic funds to actually make an impactful difference in the world, do you have any cautions about what that regulatory environment should look like, and any ways of mitigating against the kinds of mistakes that a lot of other sectors in the world encounter when it comes to regulating a sector that's based on individual generosity a lot of the time?
Thank you. I'd love to learn more about your advisory
Please.
services. So just to clarify, the $2 trillion of philanthropic capital is not capital held, it's actually disbursements a year. So this is money that actually gets sent around the world. If you look at philanthropic capital that's in terms of assets that are currently held, it's well north of that. Difficult to get good data, because you can get decent data from the US and some of Western Europe, but elsewhere it starts to become a bit fuzzy. But that in itself is a great research project. The other thing I would say is, I think you were referring to potentially DAFs, like donor-advised funds, and that's just a consequence of the tax regulatory. You know, on the one hand, for those who aren't familiar with this, as you know, you get tax credits for what you give in certain jurisdictions. The US is the obvious big example of that. So that incentivizes part of the giving. But there's this thing called DAFs, donor-advised funds, where you can pay into a fund that doesn't necessarily disperse that money to the beneficiary yet, but the moment you pay into the fund, you get the tax credit. So people are paying more into these funds are getting bigger and bigger, but aren't necessarily dispersing those funds. So that's become a little bit of friction now, and it needs to be resolved. Luckily, it's someone else's jurisdiction. But what I would say here is, fundamentally, when you're building regulatory reform, building an enabling regulatory environment, you want to make sure that that regulation encourages and inspires and incentivizes people to do something. So in this case, it's to set up either foundations or philanthropies, non-profits, in order to, as Fadi says, to solve problems. That you want to make sure that it doesn't stifle, right? You look at what it should do and what it shouldn't do. That's number one. Number two, build transparency. This is also key. And why? Not for transparency's sake, because transparency ultimately creates a sense of accountability. And accountability builds trust. And trust is the most important commodity in any system. So you want, again, a regulatory environment that helps to build trust within the philanthropic community, but also between sectors. If you look at things like the Edelman Trust Barometer, which has been now going on for, 15 years or so, I encouraged Richard Edelman a number of years ago to start looking at foundations and start looking at people's perceptions in terms of trust of the social sector. He said it's very difficult and how we do it, but they developed some methodology. It's not perfect, but it's improving over years. And it's very interesting. I mean, it's interesting to note that people want to trust and believe more because they understand that the social sector is a key stabilizing force in society, but they don't understand enough about it. They don't know enough about what goes on, and that goes back to the point of transparency. So, in essence, what we're trying to create is a system that builds trust, that reduces friction, that creates more incentives, but we have to do it in our way, right? We can, of course, take inspiration from what's worked and what hasn't worked elsewhere in the world, and we're doing that. But we're not, as I said before, just applying a cookie-cutter approach. That will backfire. So it has to be something that's culturally fit and will ultimately stand the test of time.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Fabio, for organizing this enlightened initiative. My name is Rabia Khouri. I'm a fellow member of the venture capital community, with Fadi.
Mostly good.
Hopefully. So venture capital has a philanthropic angle, and Fadi will elaborate on this a bit more probably. We underwrite through the failures of the investments we do, the education of entrepreneurs. I mean, this is a different way of actually educating people without going through a formal, education like at NYU. Exactly. It's another channel. Said. But I wanted to address a part of venture capital that's called angel investing. And Fadi is the reference on this. In our VC community, we call Fadi our super angel. Fadi has done probably the most angel investments of anybody in the region. And angel investing is, obviously there is we're trying to make money at the end of the day, but there is a much larger philanthropic educational angle to angel investing. And maybe Fadi can add a bit more, and we can discuss some of the initiatives that are happening on the angel investing side, which is a less formal, more nurturing, more human interaction between investors and people who have knowledge with young entrepreneurs. Maybe Fadi can, because it's a different part of venture capital. Thank you.
Somebody killed this one. Yes, thank you. So I didn't want to talk about this and what some of us, the very early angel investors, let's call them. I started investing, and they call it now angel. I didn't know what it was called then. So we were back maybe 26, 27 years ago in the very early days of the internet, right? So I would write checks for people because I had taken the company public on NASDAQ, and people said, okay, entrepreneur, successful, went on NASDAQ. It was a novelty, right? So people knocked on my door and I wrote checks. But those of us that were writing checks that created the whole industry that you see today. I mean, we were the first people that said there is entrepreneurship happening in the region. There is tech entrepreneurship happening in the region. You can actually make money out of it. And it's risky, yes, but you are going to empower the young generation to actually build the digital economy, right? This is before, with all due respect, before the sovereign wealth funds even thought that they could invest in the region or wanted to invest in the region. Now they do. I mean, now they're fueling it. They took it to the next level. But MEVP, Rabi's original company, had a small, it was not an angel fund, but it was small enough to write bigger checks. But and a couple of other organizations that were writing created the industry that we talk about today. And it took a lot of risk. It took a lot of time. I mean, the first company that actually made it out of this region called Maktoub, where I was their first. I mean, that's also another claim to fame. So I was part of the original team that built that business. The two founders ran it, and I was part of the original funders. When it eventually attracted Yahoo to come and acquire it. That was 10 years later, right? So again, patient capital. We were not in a hurry. We didn't build the building. We didn't do anything. There was no oil. There was no gas in it. It was 300 engineers in a back office in Jordan. They owned nothing. Nothing except a website. And it was sold for $170 million. And people said, oh my God, you can actually make money outside of bricks and mortar? And so, yes, and so at that time, there was, for me, I call entrepreneurship, there is the era of pre-Maktoub and post-Maktoub, because the post-Maktoub, so many young people said, I want to be like Hussam and Samih, the two founders of Maktoub. And so you had a whole generation of people that their parents, I had people that mothers would tell their children, why are you working in this technology company? Go work in government, go do this, go do that. It's not, and then suddenly, the mothers would say, Samih and Hussam, entrepreneurship, wealth, businesses, etc. Now, this is not philanthropy as such, but it's impact. Yeah, of course. It's impact, it's making a difference, it's changing the narrative so that you can think that you can build businesses rather than only look for employment. Nothing wrong with the previous one, but it also opens doors. Did I answer the question? Thank you.
Can I go to the front here? There's already. They're picking for us now.
Hello, sorry. My name is Rasham Salam. I am founder of Next Gen of Immunology Consultancy. I'm a scientist, immunologist, deep tech, background academia, worked in Singapore, France, to help PhD students to go from ideation to a small business, not yet, like still IP owned by universities. I help these students to go from academia, pure academia, to tackle entrepreneurship in deep tech. Of course, it's an honor to see you all. I saw you all on social media and YouTube. I'm an admirer now. I came just to understand what philanthropy in MENA, and I found in front of pioneers, so it's an honor and pleasure. I have actually a couple of questions. First, for your Royal Highness. It's a lot of things to handle such big capital, especially when you are targeting emerging market for women in MENA. Although women in general, we are entrepreneurs. Like my mom, my father used to come put the salary on the table of the house, and she was the one who will decide the budget for my father. So entrepreneurship in our DNA as women. How do you think, as educated, highly educated women in MENA, how do you feel philanthropy can help them to switch from just salary-based work to a real entrepreneurship? Because this is a big thing I'm kind of facing right now with the scientist women from MENA, when I tell them, you don't have to just look for a promotion and become assistant professor. You can do something else with your diploma. How do you think that? And I have a question for Mr. Fadi. How can we collaborate? Because there are a lot of scientists. No, not the check. Actually, I am against just giving money like this. Well, I wouldn't mind, but... Okay.
I will leave time for networking afterwards. Don't worry, there'll be lots of possibilities.
Yeah, thank you very much. What impressive, mashallah, journey that you have. I don't think it's relevant to philanthropies or people like Fadi, or it's about you. At the end of the day, it's your choice. And being a mother and a housewife, by the way, it's one of the most difficult jobs in the world. Motherhood is the only job that you cannot resign from. At the end of the day, you can get divorced, but you cannot stop being a mother, to be very honest. So you being the person who put food on the table, you being the person who will spend the money on the table, or you will be the person who will purchase the table. This is up to you. It's not up to anyone. So let's go back, because I always repeat that in all my talks. Ladies, it's not about having, it's okay for you to be your goal in life, to get a very well-educated, empathetic dreamers as your kids. For us not to work a lot, we must have good mother along the way. So being a mother, it's not something bad. Being a housewife, it's not something bad. You're actually building with us a healthier community moving forward. And if your goal is to go above and beyond with your studies, again, it's up to you. So the answer is with you, not with me. That's it. Yeah.
And just to answer you very quickly, part of strategic philanthropy is how do you marry the private sector and venture into IP-based research, right? So this is very early. Rabia can tell you also about it, and Badr can do that. How do you, this is, the Americans have done miracles with it. Silicon Valley sits on that story. So the partnership of government, research institutions, and venture capital in creating the 21st century or whatever, solving for whatever problem. But that's part of also grant giving. So it's not only about making money, it's about grant giving, so that you can enable your researchers to go out and actually solve for whatever she is or he is solving for, and then helping them in the commercialization process. And in that, you need to actually change the way universities work. The university cannot own the IP alone anymore. There needs to be a shared IP ownership by the researchers, by the scientists, and the universities so that everybody benefits.
If I may add, really, sorry.
Yeah, there's more comments on this. Please, Muna.
Yeah, if I may add, really, just to give you a live example, Meme Foundation has given out a grant to the AI lab at NYUAD, where we're investing in Dr. Farah Shammout and the work she does with women's health, oncology, brain health, and she's looking at real-world data. Now, this is a very, very new way of giving. And even a very new way of how scientists look at what they're working on, but really about solving problems, And so we're really strengthening, the future of the next gen of scientists in that manner. Now, I think what would be useful for us is to post the research. What does Dr. Farah do with this research in terms of the, as you said, real life? How do people come up with solutions, let's say? So it doesn't just stop there. It continues post the research. And we all know that in the MENA region, there's much less research done. And I think it's really important for the private sector to invest a lot more in R&D, invest a lot more in science and scientists. And further to that, what Fadi is talking about, which is, early stage, VC, later, it doesn't stop there. So I think maybe these examples are really good examples to take forward with you.
So I couldn't agree more. The huge requirement and therefore opportunity to marry more private capital, including philanthropic capital, with university IP and research more specifically. Very important for the region, but even globally, by the way, there's still a lot of fuzziness. The two worlds still haven't properly met. I mean, just to give you a personal example or experience, I became a number of years ago very interested in sort of microbiome science, microbiome-based therapeutics, the intersection of microbiome, genetics, metabolomics, and how it might relate to the region, because we have such, again, a dearth of data about our own microbiome, which, as some maybe know, we share fundamentally a huge percentage of our DNA with everybody around the world. But on microbiome, it's very specific, or individual, I should say. So initially started with going out there and trying to find PIs, principal investigators, that I could give grants to. And I did in various parts of the world, in the US, in Japan, Ireland, France, Germany. Found someone in the University of Sharjah also who was doing some great work on parasites. But then, I became known as the person who gives out grants. So I started getting approached by many of these universities to say, well, why don't you give us more? Of course, the US institutions do it best. They've perfected this art of asking for money. And good for them. I think everybody else needs to learn from that, really. But it got to a point where I couldn't give any more. I was giving certain amounts, but cutting much larger checks wouldn't be possible if it was just pure philanthropy. So I was working with them on partnering with them, giving them effectively investing in these IP. High risk, super high risk, because only a very small percentage of these molecules or programs are going to see the light of day. But nevertheless, hugely impactful. So the upside is massive, not just from a return on financial capital, but in terms of return on social capital. And so, but what I found in that journey of trying to partner with universities is there was no model. I mean, there are some examples out there, but they're very clunky and not user-friendly. So that was a multi-year process, and eventually did it with one, which is actually a university in Cedars-Sinai, which is in California, in Los Angeles, and then took that basically as a template and did it with 3 other universities, and now looking to do it with others. And this is investing in researchers who are and hopefully the first return in terms of an FDA-approved drug or program will happen next year. But if we could take that and all of us really focus our efforts on our researchers here, there is a massive untapped opportunity of intellectual property in the region, here, with the 500 and odd million people that live here, the number of scientists, academics. And by the way, this is a phenomenal time to be looking at this opportunity because we have so many Arab diaspora who are in the US and other parts of the world who are feeling left out, who are feeling that the system is now working against them and not with them, and they're looking for places to take their genius. And we should be just opening our door, throwing our doors open to them, bringing them in here. And it's small, it's relatively small grants. It really is to get them going. So this is a massive opportunity. I'd love to learn more from you about what you're doing. And again, this is all about partnership. So let's partner up.
So this is great, but given that you've been talking about universities, I cannot help myself but get involved in this conversation. The fact is that, you know, one of the ideas around building the campus here is exactly what Badr just described. And it was to create a condition of a critical mass. So what happens with the genius that Badr mentions is that they actually like other geniuses around them. You cannot do it alone. And so we've created critical mass around several areas of strength for the university, including, you should meet our expert microbiome people. In fact, some of them are Netflix. If you just wanted to turn on the microbiome documentary, you'll see him. And conceptually, considering how we develop the strength and the culture for top research, it isn't about just maybe thinking that you can publish a paper or two. It's about publishing fantastic papers of the highest quality that gets recognized by everybody, not just the world of academia, but the world that actually you belong to that actually sees this is not just a fly-by-night operation. This is a fantastic place. And I'm very, very proud when I go back to the Board of Trustees in New York. I hope there's a Board of Trustee member in the audience, where I say, you know, if NYU Abu Dhabi didn't exist, NYU would drop at least 10 points in the ranking of its ranking. That's a contribution of research, as much as it's a contribution of the... And our story around research hasn't been told as much as our story of our undergraduate. So I'm so glad that Muna has found one of our star faculty, and I know she's impressed you because she's impressive. And of course, we have an enormous capacity here for that. And I want to say that in the context of how one does the support for that, and we should really get rid of the problems, right, that you have so much experience with. I'm happy to work on that with you. I'm happy to work with everybody here. But to say, you know, generally speaking, you can have a project and you can say, I want to support this project. Or you can say, I found a person that is extremely good. The project is going to be part of the fact that I really trust that this person is going to move it forward. And we have models for both. And I think we have fantastic people that can move on a lot of things, including in genomics. And one last thing I'll say is a personal notion. We started here, for example, the first and largest prospective cohort study of Emiratis, with 15,000 people having been recruited. And we've been analyzing them for at least 8 years on average. And they're generally young, and we're sort of seeing what happens as they age in a way that has never been done before in the region and very little in the world. And those samples that we collected with the right, of course, IRB, which is the language for saying ethical use of the samples, actually began the Emirati Genome Project. Because when G42 came around and said, we would like to collaborate, can you give us access to those samples and we will give you back the genomes for the first 5,000. And then it became the whole cohort.
If I may, something we haven't talked about yet, so just quickly put this because it's so important, no, less, I'll take 30 seconds.
We have apparently 2 minutes. They want to
seconds.
just attack you on the networking side,
stories.
but we are taking advantage of it.
Storytelling, and making sure that we're able to build this repository of stories. We've got so many, I mean, we've talked about a couple on the stage already, but putting them together so everybody can be inspired by them is critical. Talk about researchers and inspiring stories. After this, I'm going to the Abu Dhabi Stem Cell Research Facility Center, which is actually a hospital. It's a full-blown hospital with an inpatient ward and everything. And to go and visit their new lab. When I went there, I was blown away by what some of the researchers were doing. Far more, at least in my limited experience and knowledge, far more impressive than what I've seen elsewhere. So putting these stories together, for that we also need good journalism, good philanthropy journalism. And anyway, that's it.
And this is important because I
30 seconds. Yalla, you have the last minute.
No, thank you very much for being here and being so patient to listen to us.
if I may, I can give Her Royal Highness and Muna maybe the last word, and we'll connect. We'll connect over the network.
For me, it's not an advice. It's just a few words that I would like you to take away with you when you're going. Think why God gave us 2 ears and only 1 mouth. So you have to listen more than you talk. And after you listen, action will follow. But you need to listen with an open heart and open mind. And do not judge before understanding the person in front of you and their needs. That's my final words. Just listen, and then action will follow.
I think my final words would be, be close to the people and to the problem. I think a lot of times philanthropists or even people who have good intention, kind of speculate on their own what is the right thing to do for people. It's really important to be very close to the people and the problem and to hear them out. As Your Royal Highness said, listen. And once you do that, you'll see the work that you do would be 100 times more impactful.
That's such a great way to end, and I just want to say thank you to the panelists. It's been a fantastic conversation. I think, at least I can speak for myself, I would continue for hours. I would learn a lot. I'm sure that the audience will feel the same. I want to thank you all for coming and expressing all of the information that you've expressed that you had the chance to, but I hope that you will continue to do that during the next little networking session, which I all invite to attend to now. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.